Cambridge Radio. Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Cambridge Film Show, your fortnightly roundup of all films worth seeing and not worth seeing around the city and surrounding area. I'm your host, Matt Taylor, and joining me today is Stuart Pask.
Hello.
And Luke Irwin.
Hello.
And Nick Kitchen.
Hello.
And Catherine Stockton.
Hi there.
We've got a typically packed 8-film show today, so we'll be kicking off with The Rock's first foray into serious cinema with The Smashing Machine, a Jordan Peele-produced sports horror in Him, a ghost story from the perspective of The Dog in Good Boy, an exploration of the life of a young man with Tourette's in I Swear, the latest Shane Black crime caper in Play Dirty, a musical version of Romeo and Juliet, confusingly called Juliet and Romeo, Cillian Murphy playing a reform school teacher at the end of his patience in Steve, and if, and I stress only if there is time, we will talk about Tron Ares. So, without further ado, here is a trailer for The Smashing Machine. Sorry, okay, no trailer for The Smashing Machine for some reason, but okay, so essentially what we've got here is Dwayne Johnson, better known as The Rock, playing MMA legend Mark Kerr in the early days of the sport. So Luke, you're the only person who's seen this other than myself. How impressive would you say is the physical transformation of The Rock for the role? I was pretty impressed. He really does disappear into it for me. Yeah, how did you feel about that?
It is really stunning how much he doesn't look like Dwayne Johnson, and this really doesn't feel like a Dwayne Johnson film in any way. There is a moment you might have seen in some of the promotional material that he wears a wig, and at one point he does shave off his hair and he looks a little bit more like Dwayne Johnson.
As soon as he shaves the hair, I just thought that is The Rock's head. He has a very distinctive head shape.
He certainly does, but I think it's credit to the film that I managed to go so long without feeling disturbed by that. I think it's not just the physical transformation as well. We're obviously associate Dwayne Johnson with these dumb action films where he does the same things. He does catchphrases. And
essentially, if you showed me a picture of The Rock in the jungle and asked me whether that was a still from Jumanji or Jungle Cruise or Welcome to the Jungle, I think most people would have a very tough time.
And indeed, he co-stars with Emily Blunt in one of those films, and she's the co-star here. And I think the chemistry that the two leads have is really what carries this film, because it really is a character piece about Dwayne Johnson, who plays Mark Kerr, who's a aging MMA fighter who's looking for his last big win.
I saw a comment saying, finally we have the biopic about the fifth best MMA fighter of 1997, so he's not particularly successful.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about the film, and perhaps one of the things that is curious, is why make this film about a man called Mark Kerr? And I think the film is setting up this thesis of the early days of MMA. You had a lot of these really unheralded people who were really putting their bodies through torture for not a great sense of reward. And the film does remind us that MMA is now a huge multi-billion-dollar deal, and I think it's trying to make us sympathise in many ways for these pioneers of the sport. We look at today's fighters, your Conor McGregors of the world, who are internationally renowned.
Multi-millionaires as well.
Indeed, and the problems that come with that. Mark Kerr has very different problems here, so it's not really a sports film in many ways.
And that was kind of what I found was the problem with it. It felt very broad, because you start off with lots of sort of footage of Mark Kerr in the ring, but then for the sort of whole central portion, he's really just kind of struggling with substance abuse and arguing with Emily Blunt. And I sort of thought, I either want a traditional sports movie or I want a more kind of in-depth exploration of this.
I think
you'll
be disappointed coming into this expecting it to be a sports film and a wrestling film. You will be pleased if you're looking for actually good acting. I think the relationship with Emily Blunt that I mentioned, who plays his partner, they're in a troublesome relationship. You may call it domestic abuse in some. There's certainly degrees of emotional abuse. And I was curious about why Emily Blunt would take a role like this, because quite early on in the film she just plays put upon spouse, and I think Emily Blunt is way too good to be doing this.
I didn't feel she was given a huge amount more to do with that.
But there was moments later in the film where she comes into it more, and the film bothers less with the trappings of talking about wrestling, and you do get a couple of sequences of wrestling which is interestingly done. There's a particular moment in this film, so we haven't mentioned yet, this is directed by Benny Safdie, who's well known for his hyper-realistic filmmaking. He tells these quite quiet stories in a way that often feels like you're watching a documentary.
Very intense and anxiety-inducing. I'm sort of thinking of Uncut Gems and Good Time, which were both incredible heart rate raisers.
And there are moments in this film, or for the most part, this film feels like you're watching a documentary, not only in the performances and the way that the camera shuffles and moves like it's capturing footage and we're spying on these moments, but also structurally, you don't get prolonged sequences. You tend to get fragments of moments. And yet there was a moment in this film, the real highlight of this film, and there's this soundtrack by Jungle Land by Bruce Springsteen, and it becomes a completely different film, and it is spectacular, and Emily Blunt is superb. And it's the moment that the whole film comes together and it does something very different. And I'm wondering what that choice was to culminate the film in that way. And I wondered whether...
But then almost after that moment, then we have a traditional sort of sports movie climax with the big martial arts tournament.
Yeah, so it does very much feel like it doesn't quite know what it's trying to do.
My understanding is this is based on a 2002 documentary. So you say it's got the documentary feel to it, and I suspect, I haven't seen it, so I'm just curious to know what you think, but they may have thought, well, this is a bit too much like the documentary. We need to sort of bolt on a traditional narrative sports.
I don't think that's often held back. We get a lot of films that they do fictionalized adaptations of documentaries. Like I think there was that film about the guy who climbed the Twin Towers. Sorry, I thought
you were about to say Everest then.
No, and you get perfectly serviceable, fictional adaptations.
Life on a Wire, I think that was.
Yeah. And this very much felt like it was very documentary.
And they've done a good job of making the look like a sports event from the early or mid-90s as well. Okay, final question. So there's been a bit of Oscar buzz about The Rock. I would say this is probably his best chance at being considered for a nomination, if that's enough degrees of abstraction. How would you say about his chances?
Yeah, I mean, it's a curious one where I think the bar is so low that when we see him do a real drama, like a film that feels like it could be an Oscar contender, I think we leap on this and think, wow, we didn't know this guy could act. We get this every now and then. We think
he has done a couple of more interesting films, sort of Pain and Gain, where he was he was attempting to do something different.
Yeah, but that was still very much in his wheelhouse. This is very different. And I don't want to downplay his acting in this because it is very strong, but I think if this had been a traditional, someone we'd associate more with these sorts of films, I don't think it would be garnering exactly this praise.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you. Okay, we're going to try once more for that trailer. So here is a trailer for The Smashing Machine.
Well, have you ever heard of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC?
That's the bloody thing they're trying to ban.
This guy is the best he has ever seen.
Do you hate each other when you fight?
Absolutely not.
How do you know Mark Kerr?
Oh, we go way back. But he's a buddy of mine.
Come on, baby. Too much?
Never.
Too much?
No.
Please welcome in his Octagon debut, Mark Kerr!
That sounds like your sort of thing. It's showing at all 3 Cambridge cinemas and is certificate 15. Next up, we've got Jordan Peele's latest production, which is a slightly odd mix of genres. It's a football-based horror about the search for the sport's next GOAT, which is greatest of all time, if you're not familiar with American sporting jargon. Here's a trailer.
There are a lot of people saying you could be the next great quarterback. I can already see it now. Cam running down the tunnel with the crowd chanting his name.
I hear you've been invited to train with legend Isaiah White himself. Care to elaborate?
I want to be the GOAT. Cameron King. Great meeting you. I'm a fan. That's crazy. I damn near worshipped you growing up. Who are you?
I'm him!
Who are you?
I'm him! Manta!
Let's play a little catch. We going to the man!
So I'm struggling to think of any other sports horror movies. I don't know if you can do any better than me, but how would you feel about the genre blend here? Did it work for you, or was it more of an oddity?
It's certainly novel, and I don't have an issue with the idea. I think the most interesting thing about this film is this central thesis that sports can feel like a sense of psychological torture. It was somewhat torturing for me to watch it, because this film wasn't especially good. I think there are moments in this film that work. I think this is the kind of film where people might use the phrase "lost in the edit," because there are fragments of the main character Cam. No, what's his name? Cam, who's sort of
the quarterback.
He's a aspiring NFL quarterback who suffers an injury and needs to rehab.
He's sort of hit over the head by a bizarre samurai figure.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's so odd. It's like, if this film was a film about, there are plenty of stories about aspiring athletes who might, they might break their leg or suffer an ACL injury, and that would ground the film in a sense of reality, where by the time it ends up descending into the absolute chaos in the final third, that would make more sense. But here we have, the whole thing is absurd, because it begins with this very unrelated and unnecessary backstory about the previous NFL. Oh, sorry, we're not allowed to say NFL because it's a protected...
It's a legally distinct football organisation.
There's a moment in the film that go, "You're in the big leagues now," and it's like, oh, what league is that? The made-up league that you've just invented here. But this guy has won 8 championships, which makes him the greatest athlete of all time. And then we need Tyreek Withers, who plays Cam, comes in, who wants to be the
next GOAT, if that phrase makes sense.
Well, we've already got the greatest of all time. You've sort of invented this very bizarre pretense, and then, like you say, he gets whacked over the head with a samurai sword, and you're thinking, like, is this supposed to be in any reality whatsoever? Like, I mentioned earlier that there are interesting things here. So I am a big fan of American football for my sins, and there is a ongoing debate about the issues with traumatic head injuries, CTE, as the medical term, and a lot of young people today are concerned about having their children get into sports because they're seeing the long-term brain trauma that can occur in this film.
I mean, you would know the average length of an NFL career is about 3 years.
Exactly, yeah. And even people who have full, healthy careers often end up having really debilitating injuries. And I was expecting the film to go down that route. There is a line where someone says, "Hey, the human brain wasn't, or the human skull wasn't designed to smash into someone else." And you think, oh, is this a film that's offering us some kind of social commentary?
And then you also get this sort of X-ray cam where you see the injuries happening on the inside of the body as they crash into each other, which I thought was pretty cool. Reminded me of Romeo Must Die back from the early noughties.
I've not seen that one, but I'll take your word for it. And I thought that was an interesting visual touch. But yet, the film doesn't go in that direction. It has a lot of very staccato sequences of this athlete being put through very absurd tests.
Because he's gone to train at the previous GOAT's secret desert compound, not at all evil compound in the...
And we won't spoil where that goes, but it gets less and less sports related as the film goes on. So, as someone who likes American football, I was very disappointed. As someone who likes horror, I was also rather disappointed, because there's the expectation that these films are supposed to unravel. They're supposed to become more absurd as they go on, and this film starts at 10 and continues at that pace the whole way through. But by the time we get to the payoff of all of this, it felt deeply, deeply unsatisfying.
I did quite enjoy Marlon Wayans' performance as the sort of, the previous GOAT. So he's, everyone is his kind of worshipper. He has a legion of cult-like fans outside his compound, preventing anyone else going in almost. But a lot of what he says just makes no sense to me. At one point he says to Cam, "If you were starving in prison, would you rather have food or be free?" And I was like, well, what am I meant to take from this? This is all just... He's doing his best, and I thought he was the one thing kind of holding it together, but the philosophical angle of this just made no sense to me, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned in your intro there, this is Jordan Peele produced. I'm not quite sure exactly how much.
I mean, his name's all over the marketing.
His name's all over it, but he didn't write it or direct it. And I think they're really pushing this angle of this being another one of those films that is about the culture of today. So you look at Get Out, looking at black culture, and then Us as well, which was less culturally relevant, but still had a real bite to it.
But I think this could have been more interesting if they'd been drawing parallels between organised sport and religion, whereas as the film goes on, it becomes more and more clear that no, it's just literally a football religion, which then just makes no sense.
And even the times when it's very on the nose to begin with, so like the football team are called the saviours, and they talk about the quarterback being the saviour of the franchise.
Well, and constant references to goats, which is a famous sacrificial animal.
And you'll see on the poster sort of in the crucifixion stance. So it's really, laying its subtext very much as text.
And do you think this will find an audience, or is it just too strange?
No, but it's already been in cinemas for a couple of weeks, and I think if you did want to watch it, despite our reviews of this, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find it beyond the next few days.
Well, if you are intrigued by that, it is him, and it's showing at the Light and Everyman. It's a certificate 18 for strong, bloody violence. So next up, we have got the true life story. Oh no, sorry, not the true life story. We've got a untrue life story about a ghost story from the perspective of a dog. There's no trailer for this because it was just dog noises. Okay, Stu, I'll come to you first. I know you were the big kind of cheerleader for this. It even push you away from going to see Tron Ares. So my first question is, does the perspective actually add to the horror, or is it just a gimmick?
So I think it really does add an interesting perspective to the movie on the whole. Cause for first and foremost, how many films are there, bar those sort of cutesy Marley and Me, that sort of thing, where it is told from the perspective of the dog? I think it's the first time I've ever seen anything like this tackled.
Now, what does that mean, told from the perspective of the dog? I presume there are humans in it.
Yeah. So the perspective of the dog is very important because it's a series of events that is sort of being envisioned by the dog, and the dog is sort of trying to work out what's going on in the human's world through the lens of what is deemed to be a haunted house. And it's it really adds something special, I think, to this film, in that there's not a lot of dialogue because dogs don't talk, but despite this, the sound design in this film is amazing. So I arrived fairly late to the screening because I'd insisted on going and getting some snacks first, and I was already running late. But it meant that by the time I came in, when I'd normally sort of sit down and settle in the cinema and I'd get all my snacks sorted so I didn't cause too much rustling and stuff and become the worst person in the cinema for everyone, it meant that I was like, I can't open any of my snacks because
Too atmospheric.
It's too atmospheric from the beginning. And the sound design is amazing, and it really, really sort of adds to the sense of sort of peril throughout the length of the film, and a sense of unease.
And I imagine it's not a particularly gory horror film. It's more about the suspense.
Not at all. I mean, there is a little bit of very contextualized. It's not blood for the sake of blood. It's there for a good reason. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, Nick, I'll come to you next. I've been reading a little bit about this. Apparently, we get some canine sense sort of vision throughout the film, a little bit like the horror movie Wolfman, if you saw that.
Yeah,
So,
very much so.
Does that add to the experience for you?
So, Stuart's absolutely right. It is from the perspective of the dog, entirely shot sort of through the lens of the dog's, the cameras are down low looking up at the same. But it's also, and I think this is important...
So lots of point of view shots.
There's lots of points of view shots, but it's also the perspective of the dog. It's not just the perception, it's perspective, because Stuart's absolutely right. The dog is hardwired and tuned to look after its owner, and it doesn't really understand what's going on. And there's a bit of
the case the dog can see things that the humans can't?
Absolutely. So the dog is seeing visions and well... To be clear, the film doesn't explicitly explain what's going on. You are left... this is a supernatural, spooky horror, haunted house movie. It's a haunted house movie. But it's show don't tell. It doesn't absolutely explain what's going on.
But does it resolve satisfactorily then?
No, I think it resolves satisfactorily enough. But I think there's a Johnny-style Shining where the owner of the dog begins to, is he becoming possessed or is he ill? There's an unknown illness. It's not made completely clear, but the dog is hardwired to look after its owner. But there are points in the movie where you think, actually, dog, get out of there. But it can't, because it's connected and very much in love with its owner. Two other things I would say. One is that it is 72 minutes. It's a short movie, which I was thankful for.
And I've heard it outstayed its welcome.
I don't think it outstayed its welcome. You might argue it could have been a good short, a 20-minute short. Having said that, I didn't feel outstayed its welcome, but it couldn't have gone on much longer. It would have become repetitive. It was just beginning to. It didn't, but it could have quite easily gone into that thing. And the last thing I wanted to say was, if you are a dog owner, as I am, I woke up this morning and looked at my dog looking at me as I was waking up, and I felt even more bond and kinship with my dog. So if you're a dog owner, you will go home and give your dog a big hug after this film.
Oh, that sounds lovely. So Luke, I'll come to you next. So this is the kind of movie where I think if I ever took my wife to see a movie where something bad happened to a dog, I think she would never quite forgive me. So it's a sort of horror movie with a dog, but is it too horrific for dog lovers, do you think?
This is my real concern. I was so uneasy the whole time, hoping that nothing bad happened. And that Indy the dog, who Nick just told me off air, is the director's real-life dog.
Yep.
So you imagine the dog was treated very well and was very safe. But I was hoping the whole time, I hope this dog knows that this is all play and pretend.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's voice actors whose job it is to make distressed animal noises, because it's not ethical to have animals making distressed noises themselves. So I was wondering how you can get a performance out of a dog.
Yeah, and
like
it is. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned this, and bear with me with where I'm about to go with this, because it is. We've said that this film really is a dog's protective, and there's a reason we're talking about it so much. Is because there's so much. The film hinges on this dog's ability to be able to act, and it reminded me, in 1929, the first ever Academy Awards, there's an apocryphal story, it turns out, that they were campaigning for Rin Tin Tin the dog to be nominated for Best Actor for the film Frozen River.
Time to bring that back then.
Yeah, so the story goes, they thought that people wouldn't take the Academy Award seriously if they had a dog win the award. It turns out that unfortunately isn't a true story. That's a gag that was made by the producer Daryl Zanuck at the time. But there have been campaigns for Indy the dog to get awards recognition here. I would love to see him get some kind of honorary award.
But what would that mean in this context?
Yeah, because, does the dog know it's acting? We don't know. But I think it is remarkable that this film manages to make you feel like the dog is acting.
You get a sense of what the dog's thinking.
Yeah. It's really, these just little moments, I'm sure that they have all little tricks to do this. The dog isn't really reacting to, his owner being possessed. He's, waving a sausage in front of them, for example. What is method acting if not waving a sausage in front of people?
Exactly. But I would say it's Ben Leonberg's dog. You're absolutely right, Indy. This is not Superman CGI Dogland. There's no CGI in this at all, and the dog is wonderful. And I forgot what I was going to say. So, Stuart.
I think it's it's one of those times where we have a problem on the film show where we have to make a decision on what film we go and see on a Friday night when the big sort of blockbusters come out and the latest releases come into cinemas. So for me, it was a choice between seeing Tron or Good Boy. And in reality, this just sounded like the much more interesting film.
Yeah, you made the right choice.
Well, that's good. Yeah. And just to say for people listening as well, it is Ben Leonberg's. Remember that name. It's his directorial debut, and I think on the basis of this, we've got plenty of good films to come from him.
A bright future ahead. Well, frustratingly, it's limited to only showing at the Light, and only had one screening yesterday, which is why I struggled to make it. But if you are intrigued by Good Boy, it sounds like an overwhelming thumbs up from the gang here. It's a Certificate 15, only showing at the Light. Okay, now we're moving on to a true story of John Davidson, who is a man with Tourette's who has struggled throughout his life but has then become an activist for educating people about Tourette's. Here's a trailer.
Can you make a decent cup of tea?
Oh, I am good at tea. Are you spunk for milk? Are you okay with the ticks and the swearing?
What ticks? What swearing?
We need to get you out, man.
I can see he's off the medication.
I'm so sorry, pal.
I'm so tired.
Okay, so Luke, me and you again on this one. So I saw this last night. I was absolutely blown away by the central performance from Robert Aramayo. I mean, Tourette's is something which is kind of seen as a bit of a joke in kind of common parlance, but it's actually a very serious issue. And how did you feel about the central performance here?
This was such a transformational film for me. So I wasn't at all familiar with Robert Aramayo. I believe he was in the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones.
He played young Ned Stark in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So I was at a Q&A for this film they put on at the Light on Monday with the director Kirk Jones, and he spoke very well about the casting process for this actor and indeed about how to actually write a script with Tourette's in it, because he had, lines in the script saying like he ticks, he does,
and presumably the director himself must have some personal experience with the subject.
Yeah. So he mentioned that he'd been familiar. There are a series of documentaries about this man dating back even through his childhood. So this film goes through from his early teens, John's early teens, when he starts to develop the symptoms, all the way through to his adulthood.
And that opening as a child is tremendously bleak.
Oh yeah, really, really devastating. And I think it's a bit of a cliche to refer to a film as an emotional roller coaster, but and maybe that's a bit flippant as well, but this film has those really bleak moments, but it also has really fun moments.
I felt it was a film of two halves, because it's so bleak up until John manages to find a job and find someone to give him a chance, and then it's really up.
But just going back to the casting, so Robert Aramayo ended up tailing John, I'm sure that's not the phrase, following him around. Shadowing him for months, learning all the different types of ways that this affects him, and they ended up being far more improvisational when it came to filming it. They didn't stick to the script where it's like, oh, he does this tick here. They just went with it, and it feels so natural. And I think it's a really honest performance. And at this Q&A, several people didn't even have a question. They just said to Kirk Jones, thank you very much for making this film. Because I think it's like I think a lot of people have fallen into this trap of thinking of Tourette's as that joke thing where people shout swear words in the middle of the street, and we feel bad about laughing about them behind their back. And I think it was really eye-opening for me to see, not that I thought of it as a joke, but to realise just how much this affects people. And there are moments in the film where you see these moments where he's confronted with someone who doesn't realise he has Tourette's. Like he shouts a slur at a young woman, and that ends up...
It makes the world a very dangerous place for him.
Yeah, because... and what's particularly interesting as well is that I didn't know that Tourette's is not... I think we associate it with swearing, and I think it's actually a bit of a flaw of this film, is the title. The title makes that a gag. Apparently only about 10% of people with the syndrome...
I think it's 2%.
Somewhere between 2 and 10% of people actually swear as a result of their condition. And the film manages to get a lot of good gags out of having him say inappropriate things, but it also shows just other moments where like his involuntary tics and movements, and he's spitting food. There's a really heartrending moment where he's forced to leave the dinner table as a young teenage boy because he just can't stop spitting, and people don't understand him. And the arc of this film is about him advocating and raising awareness for the film. So within the text of the film it's doing that, but also the film watchers ourselves are raising our own awareness of the symptom, and it is absolutely really quite stunning.
It was fantastically well done. I'm not sure about you, but I felt myself on edge the whole way through, because I felt so bad for this character that at any moment he could lash out and hurt someone. There's a couple of moments in the film where he would just punch someone who's trying to help him, or even a dog at one stage, and it's quite shocking just to see that come out of nowhere, and you just think, when could this happen again? Okay, so what was your personal emotional highlights from the film? I think for me it was when he finally gets an experimental medical device that gives him a little bit of relief. He's finally able to sort of walk around.
Yeah. I'm almost hesitant to refer to any specific moments because I feel like people should go into this film with knowing as little as possible. There is the moment where he meets someone else who has Tourette's, and that captures everything that works about this film, because it's both really funny. The two of them end up, apparently it's quite common for when two people are together,
and they don't have to hide themselves.
It becomes
anymore.
like a domino effect where one person's tick sets off another person's, and it's both really funny and absurd, but also devastatingly sad. And I was doubled over in laughter, but then immediately going, why is this funny? This this is devastating. But it is funny seeing people say absurd, awful things. And I think it also works in an element of, like, there's a universality to it, this idea of we all have thoughts in our head, this idea of the call of the void, where we think of things and we know we don't say them. And I think all of us but most of us, I certainly do, have this moment where you think, gosh, where's that thought come from?
And thankfully we're able to not act on it.
And I think this shows it's like, what happens if you just don't have that impulse? It was very, very humane, and it, like, Kirk Jones talks as well about the comorbidity between Tourette's and a bunch of other neurological disorders like ADHD and autism. And I think a lot of people, even if they don't have Tourette's themselves, will relate to parts of this film. One other thing I want to mention quickly, I know we've talked about, I've gushed with praise about this. The distributor of this film, Studio Canal, are putting on a series of relaxed screenings, which I believe is to encourage people who have Tourette's to be able to go to the cinema and to watch this film, because I think it will be just as rewarding for these people to see someone like themselves on the screen, and I think maybe they would be
some authentic representation.
They would be anxious about going to a film screening because of obviously their condition, and they wouldn't want to ruin the experience for someone else. So if you do have Tourette's and you want to see the film, I say look out for a relaxed screening. I don't know where they're showing in Cambridge, unfortunately.
I think the Light do some relaxed screenings occasionally. Well, that's a very strong recommendation from both of us. And if you are interested in seeing it, it's showing at all Cambridge cinemas at Certificate 15. We're going to throw over to the ads now.
Cambridge Radio. Discover the day with Cambridge Breakfast.
7 o'clock. Good morning.
We're running initially a driverless bus that's a 16-seater out of Madingley Park and Ride.
We really do know people in our local area.
Now with the rest of the morning sport, here's Lewis Mason.
Cambridge Breakfast, Monday to Thursday at 7 with Julian Clover.
Inch of Music, number 455.
And Fridays with Lyndon S.
I'm in the middle of changing my phone. It's horrible.
From Cambridge Radio.
If you're over 60, now's the time for luxury retirement at Rangeford's Strawberry Fields in Stapleford. Make friends in their vibrant community. There's a restaurant and bar with a gym, swimming pool and full clubhouse facilities. Worry-free retirement at Strawberry Fields in Stapleford. Take a tour of their show apartments and make it your place to call home.
RangefordVillages.co.uk. Exclusively for over 60s.
Music shows for every taste. Weeknights from 7.
Cambridge Radio.
Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.
Hello, welcome back. You're listening to Cambridge Radio. This is the Cambridge Film Show, and I'm Matt Taylor. Next up, we are going to be talking about the latest Shane Black movie. It's called Play Dirty. Here's a trailer.
I'm looking for a girl.
Was this an amorous inquiry?
She killed everyone on my last job. I just need to talk to her.
Do you mean actually talk? Because sometimes when you talk, people end up at room temperature.
I'll be gentle.
Who the hell are you?
Where's my money?
Christ! I needed him alive. It was a big score until you put a bullet into my own. You killed him again?
Last time, I promise.
As you heard there, lots of shooting, lots of shouting. It's another Shane Black movie. Luke, I've got a 3-part question for you. First part, are you a fan of Shane Black? If so, what's your favourite Shane Black movie? And thirdly, how does this fit in with the Shane Black output?
Yes, well, like a lot of people, I'm a fan of Shane Black's work. I think it goes all the way back to Lethal Weapon, I think, is the film that made his name. And even he hasn't made a big cinema release in a while. I think a lot of people might know him for the third Iron Man film, which I
thought that was very good. I like Iron Man.
And the reason that I bring that up is because it was very much a Shane Black film more than an Iron Man film, and this man can't help but make Shane Black films. He has a very specific style of charming, lovable rogues.
Always said at Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, the Christmas setting. He said he started out in his career saying that it's a very relatable thing. People instantly connect with the setting when it's set at Christmas, and now I think it's become a bit of a crutch for him because, again, Play Dirty is set at Christmas, and it would actually make more sense if it wasn't. When you think, why is the shops not shutting down? Why is sort of life just going on?
Why is there a big art exhibition happening at Christmas?
Indeed, exactly. And for his films to work, though, you need to have a central character that you really buy into. You know, this idea of a lovable rogue.
It was originally meant to be Robert Downey Jr., who I think could have made this work.
And Robert Downey Jr. has appeared in several Shane Black films, and I could definitely see him in this film. That would, I mean, we shouldn't be reviewing the film that we wanted to see, but I certainly didn't want to see Mark Wahlberg leading one of these films.
Mark Wahlberg, a man with one facial expression, who within the first 10 minutes has led a heist, seen one of his crew members get shot in the head, chased someone onto a racetrack, slid underneath a horse, shot the first guy in the head, and given 10 grand to his widow, all with the same facial expression.
Yeah, I mean, and the issue is that, and the facial expression is sort of very serious and stern, sort of po-faced, and that's not what you really want from this. You want someone who's smiling and having a lot of fun while doing, you know, cheeky things, if cheeky involves, you know, doing heists and, you know, that sort of business. And the cast just doesn't come together here. So the female lead here is Rosa Salazar, who I hadn't seen in a bunch of stuff, and she didn't particularly win me over here with this performance. So
I found their relationship very bizarre as well, because the sort of film opens with her doing a big betrayal, and then suddenly they're working together again like nothing's happened.
Yeah, I mean, that they do try and resolve that in the final act of the film, but also she's driven here with this very clunky political subtext about some a political revolution that's happening, and she keeps using the phrase "my country," but she never mentions what her country is.
That was one bit I enjoyed, where she's launching into the story of the thing they're about to steal, and Mark Wahlberg just says, "He doesn't need a story. Let's go."
Yeah, I mean, but why did the film so consistently need Rosa Salazar referring to this vague notion of a Central American country?
Hey, if Top Gun Maverick can get away with it,
I mean, that is a fair point, and I think maybe that goes to show how ingeniously written Top Gun Maverick is, or perhaps how charming Tom Cruise is, that he can sell the idea. None of the cast really sell this. Lakeith Stanfield, who, I mean,
he was doing a bizarre accent.
Yeah,
throughout.
I mean, he's like, I love Lakeith Stanfield. He's in a bunch of really great and interesting roles. And he's here. I mean, he's the only one that's having a fun time.
I think Nat Wolff's having a fair amount of fun as the hysterical assistant of the evil mob boss.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll give you that as well.
I did kind of enjoy the way that Shane Black kind of undercuts the genre tropes. Sort of a character will say, "Shoot me if you want," and then will immediately get shot in the head. Or a character can get dropped out of a window and somehow survive, which almost never happens.
Yeah, but I mean, that has a very limited window of appeal. Once that's the only thing that you're going to.
Once you realise that's always the punchline.
Yeah. And it's also worth mentioning, I did not know this coming into this film. So this is based on a series of novels by Donald Westlake, who is a quite well-renowned pulp American writer. And his adaptation...
So these are the Parker novels?
Yeah, these are the Parker novels. Have been adapted many, many times.
Most recently with The Stath.
Yeah, with Jason Statham in the film Parker. And watching this film, I didn't expect to think, gosh, Jason Statham was really good at acting, wasn't he, in comparison to what we've been served up here. And it just made me think, gosh, let's watch Parker instead.
Yeah, I'd personally not want to watch this again, or Parker again. But it did divert me for the time in which it was on, and I did laugh occasionally. So I think, in that sense, not terrible for a streaming release. If you are intrigued, it is a Certificate 15 streaming on Prime Video. So next up, we have Juliet and Romeo, a musical adaptation of the Shakespearean classic. Here's a trailer.
You were fighting with the Montagues.
And you? Juliet, daughter of Capulet.
They say the world is spinning round, but you come along and time slows down.
I should properly introduce myself. I'm
Romeo.
I knew that my heart would never beat the same.
Did you not see the look in her eyes? She's changed. It takes a mother to know.
Are you
kidding me? A Montague and the Capulet would set the world on fire.
Yeah, so I have to apologise to everyone for this. This was my choice. I thought it sounded fun, and I was horribly wrong. So, Catherine, we'll come to you first. You're massively overqualified as a Shakespeare PhD student to talk about this, so I'll just let you go. What do you want to say?
Sure. Thank you. So recently there was a production of Romeo and Juliet staged in a limestone quarry in rural Estonia. The director imagined the story as a demolition derby, so Romeo was played by...
Well, that sounds quite fun.
Romeo was played by a rally truck and Juliet was played by a red Ford pickup.
Whereas in this, Romeo is played by a 37-year-old man.
Yes. So, I find that more intriguing than this particular adaptation, unfortunately. So, the changes here aren't vehicular. Rather, there are songs added to the story, and the story itself is...
Not hugely memorable songs, I would say.
Songs that are very much... reminiscent of Rewrite the Stars, I think, from
Greatest Showman. I feel like they were going
Showman,
for a Greatest Showman vibe.
Yes. And the other changes that you'll kind of get in the first 15 minutes are that it's less about like a legacy of enmity between two families that is based on like personal hatred. And more about politics, and
There's a bizarre introduction, isn't there, that goes on way too long about the geopolitics before everyone starts singing.
They make a big thing of the Italian wars that went down in the 14th and 15th centuries, and how the Montagues and Capulets are divided by these wars, which doesn't pick up later. So those are the main two kind of changes: is the musical tenor, and the kind of adaptations to the story. Those are the changes that I can reveal without spoiling it. I think changes go on, however.
You can potentially spoil this, because I think when someone makes such an outrageous change to a classic, it's almost remiss not to warn people what they're getting into before they go in. Luke, how do you feel about that ending? The sequel hook that we've all been waiting for.
I don't... It's too galling to even sort of re-traumatise me to talk about how this film ends. The thing that's most perplexing about this is the title. So, they've switched the order around. It's Juliet and Romeo.
I was intrigued by that.
And then I heard, a pop, themed musical. I thought, is this going to be a way of introducing a new generation, and it's going to talk about, is it going to be set in modern times, and it's going to look...
Well, you were initially drawn in by the line, "Where the hell art thou, Romeo?"
Yeah, which is nonsense, because they've misunderstood what the word wherefore means. Wherefore doesn't mean
perhaps
where.
Intentionally, perhaps tongue-in-cheek.
But I think you're giving the film too much credit there. I think a lot of people think "Wherefore art thou, Romeo" means "Where are you, Romeo?" But it doesn't. Anyway, we don't need a literary criticism on top of everything else that's wrong with this film. But I was expecting this film to be, we're doing pop, we're doing a female-centred modern version of Shakespeare, but this is still a costume drama set in the old times, 1400s, I guess, and yet the pop songs are still there, so
quite incongruous.
Yeah, really, and you're wondering why pop with this backdrop. Why have you called the film Juliet and Romeo when it's still a somewhat when I say faithful adaptation, I mean they've not rejigged.
It's still very Romeo-centric.
Yeah, it's very much the story as you know it. It is not, for example, West Side Story, which is, if you want a musical about Romeo and Juliet, and you see how imaginative that is and how they've updated the setting and told using the central themes of the play, referring to it in a more modern culture. Here, it's doing nothing. I was just so angry watching this, and I still don't want to reveal the end, but the end just shows that they just do not understand what the point of this play was.
It does kind of undercut the whole thing.
Yes, I think a large thing that we haven't mentioned here is that it is in the modern vernacular. So when we say it's an adaptation, the other big change is that we're not speaking in iambic pentameter.
They sort of reference classic lines throughout.
They do throw in some Queen Mab and other classic lines. Absolutely. The director Timothy Scott Bogart said that he wanted, as you might expect, his reasoning to be an approachable Shakespeare.
That's the idea, isn't it? Approachable. But who will this appeal to?
I would argue that the original text is approachable. You know, it's taught in the younger years in secondary school. However, you know, if we're talking younger than that, and I don't mean to be patronising, perhaps this might be a nice introduction for, I'm talking, you know, 5 to 8 year olds who were thinking about these large stories that have huge amounts of cultural capital. Perhaps this could be a nice introduction. However, obviously the huge changes to the plot do somewhat undercut that. I think there might be a place there for this adaptation. However, this adaptation does not have a strong case for being made.
I was quite surprised that this just sort of appeared on streaming with no fanfare, because it has a quite substantial cast. Sort of Jason Isaacs, who looks quite confused to be in it. I thought the only member of the cast who really got away with it was Derek Jacobi as the priest. But
from Kenneth Branagh to this.
But does anyone else have a performance they particularly were struck by?
It was very sad watching Derek Jacobi in this film. It felt like a lost grandpa who'd wandered into the wrong set. You've also mentioned, Jason Isaacs. I didn't realise he was in it, and then he turned up and I went, is that Jason Isaacs? Why are you here? Also a very celebrated British actor. And then the most perplexing one of them is Rebel Wilson. I mean, she's got
a musical history of being in the Pitch Perfect movies, but I don't think gets a substantial song.
No, she's sort of in it in a quite staid, dramatic role, where her role seems to be, you know, standing around looking scornful, and you're wondering what. She's going through a slight career resurgence, so she's
but she hasn't been in anything good for a while, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I don't think it's. I think the whole being the foul-mouthed young woman, she may have aged out of that and is trying to do something else, and
this isn't it.
Yeah, this is not it.
Okay, well, if you are intrigued to see just what that ending is that we've been referring to, then Juliet and Romeo, Certificate 12, and it's streaming on Now TV. Next up is a slightly better streaming offering in Netflix's latest movie, Steve. Here's a trailer.
So how you doing? I've been worried about you. All I want for you is to just speak to us, because you're not alone, Shy.
Oh, what about you, Steve? Let's talk about you.
Steve, you can't do it all.
Okay, all right, I'm here for you.
Perhaps there's a limit.
You don't know me!
So that's a trailer for Netflix's Steve, in which Cillian Murphy plays the head teacher of a reform school, for lack of a better term, where sort of young men who have been kicked out of everywhere else have one last chance before essentially prison. So this is based on a book, and the book was titled Shy, which is the name of one of the students. What do you think about the decision to change the focus to Steve instead of Shy?
I think this is an ensemble piece. So to explain to listeners that this is a film set in the mid-90s, essentially what we would have called a Borstal school back in the day, where troubled kids that are looking for a reform are sent. They're basically uneducated in the standard education system. And this is a school for these kids with special educational needs. It's a charitable trust, so it's like a private school for these kids, but they've got no money. The place is falling apart and run down.
It's extremely expensive to educate them in this way.
One can only imagine that it costs sort of £50,000 a year to educate them, or something, or whatever the numbers are. It wouldn't, you know, but and the documentary crew is coming along to do a sort of fly on the wall piece on the running of this school. The reason I'm sort of setting that up is because it's set around the events of one day, and where everything unfolds. We have a time clock stamp throughout the movie, which says it's 8:05 in the morning, and then it's 2:00, and things began to unravel with this documentary crew there. Now, the reason I'm setting it up in that way is because the film is as I say, an ensemble piece about the students as well as the teachers and the society and the way we treat these students. And as such, it's not about one individual. Now, I think the book very much focused on one of the students, and he was called Shy because he was quite introverted. And
he is almost the student we follow the most.
He is the student. He's the I suppose he is the arc, but only lightly so, because the film is, I did enjoy this film. I want to stress that, but it was a little bit muddled in places for me because it's both comic, tragic. It uses a sort of cinema verite stylings in places, and then goes more into more traditional narrative storytelling. It even has some sort of slightly psychedelic sequences in it as well. It packs a lot into its 138 minutes. It's not a long movie. And as such, I sometimes wasn't quite sure what it wanted to say and where it wanted to go. That said, as an ensemble piece, as an all-round film, you get to the end and you think, wow, I'm really pleased they made this film, and it shone a light on a part of the education system that we don't really see. I mean, there have been films about this sort of thing before. Scum was a film that would come to my mind. But... yes, it's got a great cast. And I would just put on it, Cillian Murphy's great in it. Tracy Ullman's fabulous as always. We should do more.
I mean, Cillian Murphy's always great. I was most impressed by Jay Lycurgo playing Shy.
Yes, he's the only one I recognised, actually, of the students. But the students, I thought, came across... very authentic. If maybe a little bit older than I would have. Some of them seemed a bit like maybe they're in their late 20s. But apart from that,
not as old as Romeo and Juliet.
No. And so it's on Netflix, as you will probably tell everyone now. But I would urge people to go and seek this film out because it's not normal Netflix fare, and it's telling an interesting story in an interesting way. I think it's flawed in places, but that's a minor quibble. Some of the films you've been talking about, particularly Juliet and Romeo, don't bother with that. Go and see this.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement, definitely. So, Catherine, we'll come to you next. So, there's a lot of bleakness in this film. It's showing young men who have given up on society, but did you feel that it did enough to give us some hope as well?
I actually felt that. So, one of the I won't be spoiling this because it's a larger part of the opening plot is that the reform school is having its funding cut. And I actually felt that there was, in the script and the acting, no presence of hope that they might save the day, save the school, find the funding. And I think that is largely the point, in that, the fact of the abandonment of these people on the fringes of society is the thing that we have to tackle, rather than the saving of them from abandonment. The abandonment is the thing that this film
never really
is speaking to.
A prospect of a happy ending there.
No, and that is what the film is trying to present, is that, what do we do when there is no way out for a certain part of our community that we should be considering. I thought this film was beautiful. I agree that some of the more psychedelic styled sequences were unnecessary, but I actually think that the blend of comedy and tragedy really works for me. The comedy is generated by these boys, and largely and by the way that they speak. And I thought, if you have an experience, as I do as a teacher, with people with either special educational needs or social and emotional needs, they have such a witticism and such a power and a force behind the way they speak. They are absolutely hilarious observational people, and the fact that was captured in the dialogue here was fantastic. There were other details I adored. For example, these overworked, underpaid teachers having notes written on their arms and hands because they're too busy to grab a notepad. Steve, the head teacher, having to lie on the floor because his back is in so much pain. I've done that myself, actually, on a hard day's work teaching.
And the documentary crew are asking people to describe themselves in 3 words, and he chooses very, very tired.
Fantastic. The details of that documentary crew, I mean, they go around this school and they wouldn't know a safeguarding concern if it hit them in the face. And their inability to understand what a safeguarding concern is and what they should be looking for leads to a huge amount of danger for these students. I thought the details essentially were remarkable, and I adored this movie. I would really, really recommend seeing it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's certainly the strongest movie of this week. So, Stu, we'll come to you next. So this film actually ends with a message about mental health, directing people to resources. I think it would almost have been helpful to put that message at the start of the film. How did you feel about the mental health aspect of this?
Yeah, so I'm by no means an expert in this field, so I'll be brief on this point. I did appreciate the fact that at the very end it did give if you've been affected by any of the issues raised in this film, please go and look at these resources. I think it's very important to direct people to these sorts of things if these messages resonate with people. If people find themselves in similar situations, it is really important to seek help in these scenarios, and so that's a very, very good bit to add on to the end of the film, even if it is only tagged on to the sort of the end, just before the credits, as it were. That said, as more generally about the film, again, this is one of those films where I probably wouldn't have normally sought it out. It was listed on the billing for today's show, and I thought...
glad you did?
I'm very glad I did. It's very, very well made. I was particularly enjoying the fact that some of the cinematography, they've done some very interesting camera work in it, alongside this sort of very complicated story about troubled young men.
I found you really got a sense of the school as a place. You sort of explore the grounds where they're playing football, and you see where these students sleep and where they learn. And I enjoyed the sense of it.
The one thing I would say for both you, Matt, and Catherine, you have experience in this field in teaching, and if it resonated with you and you recognised what was going on, then that couldn't be higher praise, really.
Absolutely. We were told, a lot of teachers were told to go and watch Adolescence, which you actually should go watch if you're a teacher in the UK. I also would as much recommend, if you are a teacher, going to watch Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Stu, did you have something else you wanted to
No, I'd like to say, if it's the sort of film that if you also wouldn't necessarily think it would appeal to you, it should probably be watchable. And given some of the other stuff that we've said that is available on streaming services this week, this is definitely a great deal better.
Yeah, it's fantastically entertaining as well as being a very important story, I think. So we were possibly going to talk about Tron Ares, but I think given the length of time left, I would just say that it's extremely loud, extremely tedious, and extremely poorly thought through, and I would not recommend anyone go and see it, even though I did enjoy getting the 3D glasses out for an IMAX screening yesterday. So that's about all we've got time for this week's Cambridge Film Show. I hope that you'll join us in 2 weeks' time when we'll be looking at the latest horror movie, The Black Phone 2, as well as Channing Tatum as a guy who's robbed 45 McDonald's in Roofman. And the one I'm most excited for is the new Luca Guadagnino film, After the Hunt. But until then, it's goodbye from us.
Goodbye.
Bye. And I hope you'll join us then. Bye-bye.
Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.